Professor Anisur Rahman. Professor Anisur Rahman, introducing him is no great task because sir is currently professor in the Center for West Asian Studies and former director, UGC Human Resource Development Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Before joining Jamia Millia Islamia, sir has also worked at the Institute of Applied Manpower Research, Planning Commission, and Government of India. His area of interest includes South Asian migration and diaspora, Gulf social demography, issues of higher education and minorities. He has published 12 books and over 70 research papers in reputed journals in India and abroad, including his contributions as chapters in edited volumes by well known authors. So, with your permission, let's start with the paper presentation.
Yes, please. I think without wasting our time, I think we should start the session. Thank you once again for having me over here to chair the session. So what we are
Uh,
basically expecting from the, can I speak a bit, just 1 minute?
sure, sir.
Yeah. So let us begin. I think I am welcoming all the participants and the organizers. I'm also very happy that the Tamil Nadu Center for Women Studies is organizing a very I think very good program to which we all have got the chance to listen on the very important theme of this session. So I am thankful to all the organizers to hold this kind of program. So it has been going on from yesterday, and it will be the culminating today. So this is the morning session. So I have got this chance. So once again, I'm very thankful. And what basically we are expecting from the participant that whenever we go to any seminar, you all know our conference, we get the chance not much at time. Time is always the constant. So we assemble here to learn from each other. So what basically we are expecting from you all that what are the talking points in your presentation, means in your seminar, in your paper to which you need to highlight. Otherwise, within 10 minutes, it's very difficult to present whatever you know. So the idea is to just have the debate and discussion. So definitely, if we spare enough time, so we will have question answer session because many participants would also be there. They would have their own comments, observations, and the queries. And at the end of the deliberation, I will be also, if time permits, definitely I will give my own remarks on your presentation. So thank you once again for having me. Yeah, now it's
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. So, the first presenter of this session is Dr. Mohammad Aslam Parvez. Do we have him with us? Dr. Mohammad Aslam Parvez.
I think he has not joined yet.
Okay, no issues. We have, I can see Dr. Huma Hassan, Assistant Professor, Aligarh Muslim University. And the topic of her paper is Retrieving the Archives Forgotten Feminists from South Asia. So, Dr. Huma, over to you. Please start presenting your paper. Huma?
Can you please unmute me? Can you please unmute me? Okay.
Ma'am, you are muted. You are
Okay.
unmuted. We can see and hear you.
Okay, now I am. Now I am. So, a very good morning and salam to all of you. And I would like to start by congratulating Jamia and the Center for Women's Studies for organizing this conference entirely on Islamic feminism. As yesterday Mariam Cook was pointing out, that I think it is the first international conferences that I've attended that is solely based on Islamic feminism. And let me give you all a short background, because I started teaching at the Center for Women's Studies way back in 2005. And this was a time when the international feminism at the international level or at the national level, I would say, in not much was known about Islamic feminism. Now, Islamic feminism, when I wanted to add it as a part of my syllabi, even in Aligarh Muslim University, I was not sort of allowed. There was a lot of resistance within the higher echelons, and I had to teach it under the banner of third world feminism. So it's only now that people are aware, and 20 years down the line, so it is very heartening that we have a whole seminar that is based on Islamic feminism, and it is acceptable. Not only acceptable, it is being now. These are the things yesterday as we were discussing the theoretical perspectives, and how very often what happens is, what I was thinking is that these intellectual jargons or the intellectual knowledge is relegated to the academic spaces or the classrooms. So how we need to take it to the field, because a lot of yesterday what came out was, out of the sessions, I was there almost throughout the sessions, and it was a treat to hear the final session also. The thing is that there are rights given in Islam, and there has been Islamic feminism as women have started using the tool of ijtihad. And as Professor Cook also highlighted, it is not that these tools were not there, or they were not used by women or Muslims in earlier times. It was not, but it got popularized in the late 1980s and 90s, when after the Islamic revolution in Iran, where they were limited spaces and they had to negotiate within the framework of Islam. So it was not that Islamic feminism is a new thing. It was in, and today basically I'll be focusing on the South Asian model. South Asian model has not been of Islamic feminism, has not been dealt with much. There has been intellectual work on works by, for instance, Margaret Bedron and Mariam Cook, Fatma Manisi, and others who have, or Leela Abu Lugad, Amna Wadood, have focused more on the Arab version of Islamic feminism, or the feminism in Iran. So it's basically West Asia and that side. So that shows very often Muslim women in South Asia are multiply marginalized and silenced. The whole question is about that, when, for instance, 30 years ago, the main work in English on Muslim women secluded scholars was done by the famous Gail Minot. She mentioned that how she was questioned by her colleagues in the academic circles also. So they were like scoffing, are there any Muslim women who have worked, or is there any reform, question of reform or rights within personal law? The whole question is that, so I've here taken, and please keep reminding me about my time, can you, Devansh, once I pass 5 minutes, so please remind me.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
So as the chair said, rightly pointed out, there's 10 minutes are, we are just highlighting the main points. And there are two feminists from colonial India, Muslim women from colonial India, that I have taken as my starting point, or through the prism of their works, their lives, their writings, and their contribution, that I'm trying to present the South Asian model as of Islamic feminism. And there is a difference between Muslim and Islamic feminism, I am aware. But here, both of them are sort of there. There cannot be any neat differences between Muslim women and Islamic feminism, because they are practicing very often. And I would also like to highlight the lines between, within the Arab worlds also, the lines between, say, Islamic feminism and secular feminism are also have been blurred. For instance, if you talk about Huda Sharavi's taking off the veil in public, they, or Qasim Amin talking about women's rights, discussing women's rights. So we had in South Asia at that point in time, we had women like Begum Khurshid Khwaja, uh, who is the wife, who is known as the wife of Abdul Majid Khwaja, who is one of the founders of your institution, Jamia. So Begum Khurshid Khwaja has been again relegated to the academic and you can say historical within feminist history also very few people know about Begum
Ma'am,
Khurshid Khwaja.
sorry to interrupt, but half the time has passed.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes. Let me thank you. So Begum Khurshid Khwaja was not only one of the founders' wives, but she herself was a pioneer of women's education. And within keeping, yesterday they were like either you are Islamic or pious on one hand, or you are totally secular. So these two women that I have taken, they are representing the third ground or the South Asian model of you can say Islamic feminism, because the contributions, I would quickly go to the contributions of Begum Khurshid Khwaja. She was the pioneer of one of the pioneers of journalism in Urdu as far as feminist nationalism is concerned. She published in early 1920s. She started publishing a newspaper and editing it all in one. She was the editor, the publisher, and taking care of children. So today we talk about Muslim women who are not working or sitting in the 1990s or 80s, that Muslim women were not educated. But this is the early 20th century, and this Muslim woman who is independently publishing and editing a newspaper that is the first feminist Urdu newspaper known as the Hind, for which she was praised by Mahatma Gandhi. And there were, I don't have time to read out the quotations from other women feminists of that time, like Nazar Sajjad Haider, and the correspondence that crossing the boundaries of Parda, that Begum Khurshid Khwaja was directly corresponding with Mahatma Gandhi when her husband, Abdul Majid Khwaja, was in jail. So this is a very important marker which we can normalize today. We can see as normal that a woman is corresponding, a Muslim woman is getting out of parda, traveling for the cause of Indian national movement, being a part of the Congress committees, actively debating, participating in women's rights organizations throughout India, traveling for collecting funds for Jamia. So she has in this paper, there is documentation which she shows she's traveling to different parts of India to collect money for the cause of founding of Jamia Millia Islamia, because they believed in that model. So from initially, in fact, Jamia Millia Islamia, I found in her archives, because she has been silenced within the family also. Not many people knew that as we called her Dadi Amma, she happens to be my grandmother, great grandmother. So we know, none of us knew that she was the publisher. Only after her house was demolished that we found a pack of crumbling papers that was Hind. That was a set of very important. After I started teaching women's studies, I realized the importance of that document. And then she established the Hamidia School for girls of the underprivileged sections in Allahabad while her husband was posted there as a judge. Then she ran Jamia single-handedly when her husband was in jail. And the second woman is her he is her mother.
ma'am, kindly conclude in the minute or two. We are
Yes, Begum
time.
Khurshid Khwaja's mother, Begum Sarbalan Jung, who was a writer, who was an activist in early 20th century. She traveled for Hajj and she wrote her Safarnama in 1909. So these women were gradually through their travels coming out of Parda, and they were educated in English, because it was seen that she did not only traveled for Hajj, but she also went for an extended tour of Europe and Constantinople, where she interacted with all Britishers, the locals of Syria, and her impressions of Syria or the Arab world or Turkish hammams and the zananas are very interesting to be noted. That shows that there's this networking of Muslim women, and understanding of Islamic feminism was there from the time where they were quoting from the Quran, they were quoting from the works of Hazrat Bibi Aisha, and asking women to get out of the four walls of the house, not sitting at home and chewing pan and idling away their time, but working in the public sphere, as she has given the example of Hazrat Bibi Aisha yesterday, Marian Cook also talked about Aisha. So Aisha was not forgotten in South Asia. Quranic forms of ijtihad were not forgotten in South Asia. It's just certain forms of in historical documents are in Urdu, so they have not been translated yet. And these Muslim women's works and voices are multiply marginalized. So, if how much time is left?
Ma'am, the time is over. It was just
So,
about to
thank you.
inform you this.
So that I would maybe in the discussion we can carry over the
Yes,
other
sir.
contributions of Begum Khurshid Khwaja for and Sarbalan Jung. Thank you. 10 minutes is
Thank you very much. With a very short span of time, you presented a very well, I think, articulated. So, if time permits, we'll listen to you much more in the
thank you,
question
sir. Thank you.
session.
Thank
So, whenever we go to anywhere, I think time is always the constant.
yes, sir. That's
Thank you once again. Very, I think, thought-provoking presentation you have made.
thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Let us go to another speaker.
Yes, sir. So our next presenter is Mohammad Siddiq Khan. He's an assistant professor in Dehradun University of Technology, and the title of his paper is Negotiation and Collaboration, Male Islamic Scholars and Women's Reform in 19th and 20th Century India. Over to you, Dr. Khan.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible
I
and
need to
visible.
share my screen, so just give me 1 second. And just tell me if it is visible now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay.
So you
So
know the time is the constant. So sorry to just remind you that.
definitely, sir. Definitely. I'll keep in mind. Yeah.
I hope you can.
So, good morning, everyone. The title of the paper is Negotiation and Collaboration. I've chosen these two terms because male Islamic scholars who were there in 19th and 20th century, their efforts cannot be just categorized in one area, I mean, one domain or the other. They were negotiator also, they were collaborator also. Sometimes they sounded like patriarchal, but other times they were collaborating with women's reform. So that's why I've used these two terms. I'm beginning with the first slide, which is religious revivals. So when we see the history of India, we see religious revivals were already started at the time of Shah Waliullah. This is the time of Aurangzeb. Uh, since we have to understand there were two kinds of Islam that were being there in India. There was something called Persianized form of Islam, which was propagated in Mughal times, where there was a division between the religion and statehood. But as we are moving towards the history in the modern times, when we see the coming of British, and when we have this Holocaust of 1857. So after that, Muslim realized that they were just an orphan community, because actually there have been many scholars and historians who have written that the ultimate hostility that was propagated was between the Muslims and the British more than any other community. So Muslim particularly felt like an orphan community, and to to fight back, many scholars, many religious scholars propagated Arabized Islam form of Islam, which we usually understand through Wahhabism and through Hanafism. And these revivals were staunchly professing a return to true Puritan Islam, which according to them was somewhere vanished in the time of Mughal era, because Mughals were more towards Sufism and Shiaism, or we can also say, I mean, the entire history of Mughals show deviances in terms of Islam. So they were quite against them, and they wanted to come back to the true Islam. That is what they called them. So we see a rise of movements like Wahhabism, Barelvi, Ahle Hadith, Deobandi in the similar context in around in the 19th century. Then we have to see in the rivalry also that there was always a criticism from the Western progressivism, the Muslim intelligentsia, which was inspired from Western progressivism. For example, the Aligarh movement, and there were a constant rivalry between religious revivals and I mean, these Muslim Western intelligentsia. And then when we move ahead to 20th century, we also see a rise of socialism in Muslim community and scholars, and then that culminated into the Progressive Writers Association. So, and we also see a book called Angare by these four writers: Mahmoud Zafar, Sajjad Zahir, Ahmad Ali, Rashid Jahan. And there was a lot of criticism against Muslim clerics, Islamic clerics, and Islamic fundamentalism. So there was a constant rivalry. But nevertheless, we have to see Islamic scholars in other lights also. So I've taken two scholars. First is Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi, and he was a product of Deoband Madrasa. As I just said, that there was a rise of religious revivals movement, and he was trained in all the kind of teachings. Like he studied under Maulana Muhammad Yaqub Nanatwi and Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, and they were major exponent of Hadith. He himself mastered mantiq, which is logic, and he also become very skilled in the art of munazara. So this is the time when there was a lot of really, debates were going on. I mean, Christian missionaries used to come and they used to debate against Islamic scholars. So, I mean, it was paramount for Islamic scholars to learn the art of debate also. And from, I think that is the origin of, the reformism and the addition and the changes that came in the position of women. He has written a very important text called Bahishti Zevar, which is a guide for respectable women. It is actually a book of conduct. As we see in Victorian times also, there were many books written for how to behave for women, how to, lead a respectable life, how to be virtuous, how to nurture children, how to educate children. So it was somewhere on the same model. It was a guide, it was a conduct book, but it was modeled on the Islamic principle. Uh, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi himself interpreted Islam to write this book, and there are a lot of criticism also against him. And what he has given, what is remarkable about the book is that he has given description of everyday life, how that women should be living with their husband, how they should be dealing with everyday affair, and also how they should be treat, I mean, how should they themselves consider themselves to be equal in terms of the in the eyes of the God. So the attitude is egalitarian if we talk about the book itself. So as we see that the book emphasizes on individual piety. So it was against the contemporary customs in the way that usually women were relegated to a position, secondary position, that woman is important in relation to his to her husband. But Thanvi emphasized on individual piety. So woman is directly responsible for her piety to God, not to the husband or to the family. But again, there was hints of misogyny because, I've just mentioned, towards the end of the book, he has devoted many pages to just to to define what are the faults and what are the weaknesses, how bad women could be in their homes, in their personal lives, and how they could destroy the entire family also. So the book is not free from the misogyny and the patriarchy of those time. That's why their efforts can be taken in both categories. They were moving forward towards the women's reform, but at the same time, their interpretation was somewhere patriarchal as well. The next scholar that I have taken is Maulana Sayyid Mumtaz Ali, which who appears in a very important book called Secluded.
Please conclude in the next 2 minutes.
Sure. So there's an important book, as the presenter before me also mentioned, Gail Minault. She has written a very important book, Secluded Scholars. In this book, she has given the description and about the efforts and about the struggle that Sayyid Mumtaz has gone through in writing books on women's reform. And she writes that it might be assumed that Mumtaz Ali was a Western educated, perhaps a product of Aligarh College, with little qualification to write on Islamic law. But the case was different. He was a Deobandi, he was an Islamic scholar. So we have to see that Islamic scholars were coming forward to talk about women's reform equally as there were Western scholars who were talking about that. He has written two important texts. One is the book, and the other is the journal, the very important pioneering Urdu women's journal, which is called Tehzeeb-e-Niswa. And it was founded in collaboration with his wife, Muhammadi Begum. They both were editors. They both were, a producer of this journal, and it was the journal for every household. Women were reading it constantly. But there's another book called Hukuk and Niswa, which also address issues like very important issues like women's education, parda, marriage custom. And the most important thing about this book is that it has discussed the relationship between husband and a wife in length. I mean, every aspect of the relationship, the marital relationship in length. So, coming to the conclusion, we have to see that these scholars use their religious training and religious understanding of the Quran, of the Hadith, of all these schools, all these schools coming from Saudi Arabia, and then they negotiated the discourse of women's reform so that there could be. I mean, at that time they maintained the balance, which was contradictory to the position taken by those scholars who were completely westernized. So their methods were not entirely progressive, but their collaboration cannot be undermined, and we have to revisit these scholars again to interpret their efforts and their struggle to come for to make changes in women's life. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Muhammad Siddiq Sahab, for a very lively and very well presentation you have made it. So we will have the discussion.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you once again, and let us move on to the next speaker.
Thank you, sir. So now I think Dr. Aslam Parvez has joined us, and I would like to call him. Sir is Assistant Professor Educating Muslim Girls, a study of Ruqaya's contribution with respect to Sultana's dream. Dr. Parvez, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Oh, sir. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Good morning to all. My paper is on educating Muslim girls, a study of Ruqaya's contribution with a special reference to Sultana dream. I begin with some theoretical background. Islamic feminism is advocating for equality of all Muslims, regardless of gender, in public and private life. Though it emerged in 19th century, the core feminist concerns are deeply entrenched in Islam right from the inception of the religion. The Quran affirms God assuring mankind, I will never deny any of you, male or female, the reward of your deeds. Both are equal in reward. Islamic feminists advocate for women's rights, gender equality, social justice, grounded on an Islamic framework that is adhering to principles of Sharia, or yet ensuring equality in all spheres of Muslim life. There are some prominent Islamic feminists as follow: Amina Wadood, Asma Lambert, Fatima Marnisi, Mohja Kaf. Ruqya Hussain uses Islamic feminism to protest patriarchy in society and calls upon Muslim women to challenge the patriarchal interpretation of religion. She argues that Islam views men and women as equal and that women should mobilize to reassert this position. Her primary goal was to inspire women from all backgrounds, especially Muslim girls, and create an environment of sympathy and solidarity. My research paper is an attempt to explore Rokia grassroots movements to address the lack of education among Muslim women in British India, especially Bengal, India. Rokia Sakhawat Hussain was born in 1880 in the district Rangpur uh, in a village, Paraban, in British India Empire. Her father, Zahiruddin Muhammad Abu Ali Sabir, was well-educated, bilingual, and landowner. Rokia's father had 4 wives, and her mother was Rahatun-Nisa Sabira Chaudhrani. Chaudhrani bore 2 sons and 3 daughters, of which Rokia was one. Rokia married Khan Bahadur Sayyid Shekhawat Hussain, who was a deputy magistrate in the Bengal civil service. Eventually, the couple settled in Bhagalpur, Bihar. Shekhawat was a widower and a man in his early 30s. Despite this gap, he treated his wife with love and sympathy and encouraged Rokia Hussain to write. By her description, he was unlike Rokia's father. Shekhawat Hussein's educational background and his openness to Western thought enabled Rokia to pursue her goals. He also encouraged Rokia to meet with women of her class, including Hindu and Christian women. On the insistence of her husband, Rokia continued honing her writing skills and eventually in 1903 to 1904 published articles in journals in Calcutta on the oppression of women. She was aware of the fact that women in all patriarchal societies are exploited and oppressed, but felt a need to shed light on women of her group. But she was persuaded by her husband to continue her intellectual pursuit. With continued support from her husband, she published and wrote extensively. She garnered attention when Sultana Dream was published in 1905 in the Indian Ladies magazine. She has focused on Parda system and female exclusion in the state. Rokia grew in a household where women were told to conform to Parda observance. The practice begins right from a girl at the age of 5. Women are told to keep sequestered from men and strangers. Rokia critiques over the strict nature of custom. Jordan quotes, Rokia, I had to observe Parda even from women from the age of 5. I didn't understand why it was improper to meet somebody, but I had to observe Parda. The inner side of house was out of bounds for the men folk, so I didn't have to suffer by their presence. However, women freely entered the house, and I had to hide myself before they could see me. As soon as any woman of the locality would come, somebody of our house would give a signal with eye, and I could run pell-mell and hide myself anywhere. Unquote. Gender roles are strictly defined, and education was limited to reciting the Quran and etiquette lessons. During this time, the Muslim community was behind the areas of education and employment opportunity. She fought for right to education. All 5 siblings, brothers and sisters, grew in the same household, but girls were not encouraged to seek education outside home, while brothers were privileged. One of the treatment with the eldest sister, Karim Nisa, who attempted to learn Bangla by the help of her brother, she faced malicious criticism of her relatives. She was sent to the estate of her maternal grandparents and married at
So
the
please
age
conclude in the next 2 minutes.
of, okay.
Yeah.
She has also worked for educational services and vocational trainings. She established financial assistance to poor widows, shelter for victims of domestic violence. She has worked for Bengali Muslim Association and discussed some important issues. Here, she has once she had organized a seminar, especially for Muslim girls and Muslim women's, in order to disseminate the importance of education for Muslim girls. Uh, it would take time to describe this importance, so I would like come to conclusion. This text particularly highlights this text centralizes several themes such as law and order maintained by women, women education, child marriage ban, divide of violence, corruption and crime committed by men, development of sustainable place, gender role reversal from Janana to Mardana, where men are locked up to do household work, encouragement of innovative thinking and aspiration of critical awareness among Muslim girls. This is the central idea of this text. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aslam Parveza, for your presentation. So let us move on to the next presentation, then we will discuss.
Our next speaker is Dr. Lubna Irfan, who is an assistant professor at Aligarh Muslim University. Her title is the title of her paper is Writing Reform, Shaping Futures: The Urdu Magazine Khatun and the Birth of Muslim Women's Public Sphere. Dr. Lubna.
Hi, I hope I'm audible. I will begin by thanking the organizers of this conference. And I'm very grateful that a few presenters before me, like Sadiq sir and Huma ma'am, had already set a basic ground of what was the condition of Muslim women in the 20th century India. My paper is about this one magazine that was published from Aligarh. As it was mentioned earlier in the discussion, that Aligarh movement was a reformist movement, but it was only in the second phase, or the middle of the Aligarh movement, that conversation about educating women, giving modern education to women, started happening. And an important moment in that movement for educating women was publication of this magazine, which has been largely missed out from the discussion. And my submission through this presentation is that this magazine created awareness, which was the main purpose of this magazine, and it also created a public sphere where it became common and normal to talk about educating women. This magazine was published in the year between the years 1904 to 1914, and it was not the first of its kind. There were other magazines that had been published before, for example, Tehzeebun Niswa. But the conclusion of this magazine, or the outcome of this magazine, was the creation of a women's college at Aligarh, and this helped educate generations of women in modern education. It also resulted in the creation of an organization known as Anjumane Khawateen Islam in 1914. So it was the idea was started by Sheikh Abdullah and Wahid Jahan, and these two, this couple, a husband and wife couple, made it a point and a purpose of their life to create awareness, create a public sphere, create normalcy around the issue of giving Muslim women modern education. I will just quote what Sheikh Abdullah has written in his biography. He has written a biography of his wife, and in that biography, he has clearly mentioned what was the reason behind starting this magazine. The purpose of this magazine was to make available for Muslim women resources and guidance so that they can be educated. And it's very interesting because this is being written and this is being thought of in the early 20th century, before what we understand as the first wave of feminism, so in the Western world. Sheikh Abdullah writes, women are our partners and not separate from us. They also have the same needs. And to address these needs, it's our responsibility. And to fulfill these duties, we started publishing Khatun. Khatun would be a monthly magazine in which there would be essays specifically related to women. In addition to creating awareness regarding female education, our efforts would be to inculcate literary and noble spirit amongst the women, right? And this is important for the success of the world and the home. So this was the idea and the intention with which this magazine was started. And interestingly, there was a lot of criticism that was levied against Sheikh Abdullah against the beginning of this magazine, not only from the sections which were against giving modern education to anybody, and especially women, but also from people who were within the Aligarh movement. For example, there was Mohsinul Mulk. Nawab Mohsinul Mulk is a very important proponent of Aligarh movement, and he is somebody who criticized Sheikh Abdullah and asked him to restrain himself, stop publication of this magazine, because people are calling it a naturey magazine, a magazine which will propagate satanic ideas. Anything that will be published from Aligarh related to women's education was considered satanic, or was considered something that would take people away from religion, to which Sheikh Abdullah and his wife stood strong ground. And they claimed that Aligarh movement and the ideals of the Aligarh movement, which was in favor of modern education for people, is not a nose made of wax. It is not something that can be so easily molded or so easily distorted by criticisms. And he stood his ground, kept on the publication, and eventually this publication bloomed. The result of this publication was creation of a women's college, creation of a hostel where women could come and get educated and get nurtured. And in no way was this magazine against the existing social system of the time. So the purpose of the magazine was also to educate women who were the partners of the men, but also to make them better mothers. So it was still towing that line that they have to be better mothers, they have to educate their children, so they need to be educated, they need to be learned. So this was the narrative in which this magazine existed. I would just like to point out some of the important topics. I have read most of the issues of the magazine. They are available in Women's College Library. And they're also available online on British Library archives. So what were the main historical themes that were being talked about? So Gail Minault thinks that the audience of the magazine were primarily Muslim men, Muslim male intelligentsia, to which I do not agree with, because some of the articles directly address women. So women were reading Urdu, women were aware that this magazine is coming out, and some of the articles address the readers like Meri Behno, Meri Behno, tum log ye suno, some of the things are directly addressed to women. So definitely there was a female readership that was being addressed by this particular magazine. And what was the content? The content, almost in all of the issues of the magazines, there is at least one article on a historical woman. So a historical woman, there are examples like Jodhabai, who is correctly mentioned as Jahangir's wife and not Akbar's wife in this particular magazine. There is mention of Zebun Nisa Begum. There is mention of different kinds of women like Jahan Ara, Mumtaz Mahal, Roshan Ara. So the essential, what I conclude from these kind of articles is that this was an attempt at giving Muslim women of the early 20th century role models, like women that they can look up to from their own history, from their own past, from their own Indian past. There were information. There are articles which address, which talk about other female educational institutions that existed at the same point of time. For example, there is mention of Hindus Ladies Social Center. There is mention of New Zanana School at Hyderabad. These are some token examples that I have picked up from different articles in the magazine. There is information about world news and practical subjects. There is information about visit of Shah of Kabul to MAO College. There are stories on Japan and Japanese society, how Italy and Turkey, what is the society there? What was King George doing at that point of time? How did ships function? The water ships, how are they functioning? So all these technical and world level news and education was also being provided. Interestingly, this is the week
Dr.
of
Irfan, you have 2 minutes to conclude.
Thank you. This is the week where Phool Walon Ki Sair is was supposed to be held. So there is an article on Phool Walon Ki Sair also. So women who are sitting in Aligarh or who are sitting in houses nearby the vicinity in the vicinity of Aligarh, they are being told about what is happening around the world, and they are being respected enough that they should know about these happenings and about these events. There is also content about superstition, Taviz Ganto ki kharabi, how these superstitious things should be given up by women, how women should not be addressed by these things. And also there is an interesting element how articles mention Musalman Hindustan, how their Muslim identity and their Indian identity is not separate. So we are talking about 1904. So this is something that is very important, and this magazine can help us understand the psyche and the consciousness of Muslim women and men and the society at large at that point of time. And I thank the organizers for organizing this conference and for giving me the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna. Thank you so much for a very candid presentation you have made it. So let us move on to the fifth presentation.
Our next presenter is Tanya Kumar, who is an independent research scholar. Their title is Interrogative Encounters, Gendered Lives, Power Dynamics, and Legal Pluralism in Mughal India. Tanya, over to you.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
So thank you so much for giving me this chance. And so the title of my presentation is Interrogative Encounters, Gendered Life, Power Dynamics, and Legal Pluralism in Mughal India, 1500s to 1600. So the reason I chose this paper to present here is, we are tracing the trajectories of the Islamic feminism, or feminism in large. So it's very important, and especially in this current political scenario, to also go to the medieval ages and to find the position of women at that point of time. So yesterday, what we discussed about the interpretation of Quran to implementation of the Islamic laws in Mughal India, and then how the modern colonialism interpreted the legal systems, and now to a new interpretation of the legal systems by women. So I think it's and in the whole process, the position of medieval women were brushed under the carpet and were just, were always were hidden or were neglected. So I will start my paper. The tendency of the early medieval historian was to view religion, political structure, and economy and society through the exclusive nature of documents, inscriptions, and sources. So the question of what is history can be divided into recorded and unrecorded history. The subject of recorded histories were the male hegemonic imperial authorities and their objects. The objects being the state polity, military, and economy. So from the objects, the women were actually removed, were ignored. So therefore, and now with the newer scholarship, you have the roles of women being highlighted. So the larger part of the medieval historian portrayal the society as a homostatic structure, which served as a pillar to reinforce the kinship power, establishing the moral economy of the state, distinguishing between the legitimate and the illegitimate exercise of power. The modern historiography of the Mughal state concerns the framework of synchronic, static, and formal. A state apparatus, as suggested by varied scholarship, as centralized bureaucratic or patrimonial bureaucratic, focused on the male hegemonic agencies, examining the development of literacy and the concurrent changes in oral and performative tradition shaped the idea of legal pluralism. Legal concepts often seems to have continuity and foundational connections. However, the medieval contemporaries and colonial historiography focused on exclusive sacral and the rigid status of Sharia. In ignoring the ambiguity and flexibility in Sharia, the legal system in the Mughal period was largely being studied in the imperial institutional framework, represented as a unifying, centralizing thrust of Mughal. So it was in the colonial period. Now we have the segregation of the laws as personal laws of Hindu laws, Muslim law, Christians law. So now when we segregate them, we segregate the communities as well. And it was in the medieval times of the period which I am dealing with, especially talks about the pluralism in the society, that how the Muslim women were using the Hindus' law and the Hindu women were using the Sharia. The paper intends to widen the scholarship, proposing a multi-dimensional relationship with three sources of law: local customs and tradition, state law, and religion and cultural norms. The main focus of the paper is to shed the light upon the legal apparatus of the Mughals and how it was used by women, both Muslims and non-Muslims. Women were the key agents to utilize the dynamic nature of the normative structure as to resist, negotiate the condition of their oppression for their social mobility and becoming the power holder. Legal codes, to a great extent, focus on the regulation of sexual behavior, with women being more restricted than men. The law sets the limit to the permissible behavior and offer a rough guideline through the social structure underlying the uh, law. So this work I have referred to as the sexuality in Islam. So it states that in Islamic families was to essentially be the male worshipping, as man who marries take possession of half of its religion. Indeed, the primacy of man over woman is total and absolute. Women proceed by man. Woman is chronologically secondary. She finds her finality in man. She is made of for his pleasure, his repose, his fulfillment, and there's a certain primacy of a man. And it also legalized that the woman who is you should be fearful is it needs to be rebellious, and you should remove her from the couch and beat her. So this provision in Sharia to chastise women and beat them lightly provided a justification for domestic violence. So that a specific clause need to be inserted in 17th centuries, and these papers were actually studied by Professor Shireen Musvi. And this talks, so there was a clause which was added in the Nikahnamas of 17th centuries that, you cannot beat a woman with a stick so that it leaves the marks, the bruises on her skin. So like it should be light enough that there is no mark on the body, but these terms are found in the contract of the Mughal administration, Siafnama, therefore reflecting a common need. The speculation of the standards of Nikahnaama against the woman for severely beating his wife bring out the anxieties entertained for protection against the provision for that Muslims had religion sanctions. The other speculation is the standard Muslim contract offered protection in the bound of the husband to provide monthly maintenance to the women. So later in the paper, we will see kind of very interesting cases, which was studied by Professor Farhad Hassan and Shireen Musbi. So Munsat-e Namakin, a 16th century source from the reign of Akbar, also contained large number of legal and contractual documents which throw lights upon different incidents. Beside mentioning meher, four very significant conditions are mentioned in the marriage contract, which gave women some degree of agency. These conditions are referred in document as the four conditions of Sharia. First, the man would not enter into marriage with any other woman. Second, you cannot stay away from your woman for more than a year or around a year and not provide her the maintenance. Third is that you cannot beat a woman that leaves impression on her mark. Fourth, that a man cannot keep a concubine, and in that case, if a woman finds out, she can sell the concubine, and the price she will get after selling it will be her possession. So there is an example of a woman called Habib Bai, got a divorce in 1628 as her husband, Ishaq, failed to provide her maintenance and was adorning for a long time. A similar case in 1633, Salima Khatun, getting divorced in the same ground. Islam recognizes women inheritance from their kingship and accord them to manage their property. The various sources, Muslim women during the Mughal acquired property rights through access to residential and agricultural land, houses and gardens. The three traditional ways in which the women were inherited land: inheritance, handed property, inheritance, meher, and gifts. So we have examples from the Sheikhs and Sayyid families of Kasbai, Biligram, that the daughters and the daughter-in-laws were getting properties. The meher can be divided into muajil, which is paid in full time during the time of this marriage ceremony, while muajil can be aided in installments and demands. It is always paid.
Tanya, you have 2 minutes to conclude.
Thank you so much. So you have, it was not always that, you were handed to cashes. There were gifts of kind, and also lands were also given. So, yeah, so there was in Afghan family, a widow was inherited a residential land brought by her husband. In another case, we've also documented a family members were singling out women. After the death of the husband, the family members were singling out the women. So tamlik namas were the deeds were given to ensure that the women and the daughters will be safe from the encroachment of the male members. The practice of drawing conditions at the time of marriage or later was very common across. So there was this incident recorded at 22 October 1634 that, a man promised that he has left consuming liquor and he will not consume it now. And if he consumes this and his wife finds out, so he will, the wife has the right to annul the marriage. And yeah, so such laws, sources, and documents serve as a mean to expand the idea of law code, significant development and differences between the legal practice and the textual legal practices, and the relationship between the two has been fluid and malleable, hence providing a wide variety of contested and shared meaning of interpretation. And this all idea, of segregating is just the colonial idea, and how the rural legal system is converted into a state-centered system with the colonial hangover which was given to us. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for your very lucid presentation with a very, I think, short time. So I think last presentation is to be only done. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So our final presenters for the session are, it's a paper written by so I invite Rabiul Molla and Tanmoy Shaha, who are research scholars at Rabindra Bharati University. The title of the paper is Challenging Patriarchy from Within: Muslim Women's Education, Agency, and Feminist Praxis in Colonial Bengal. Over to you, Rabiul and Tanmoy.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am Robiul Mullah and I am presenting the paper on behalf of my co-presenter Tanmay Saha. The title of my paper is Challenging Patriarchy from Within: Muslim Women's Education, Agency, and Feminist Praxis in Colonial Bengal. This paper explores an often overlooked yet deeply significant aspect of South Asian history: the intellectual, social, and political contribution of Muslim women in colonial Bengal. The paper examines how they navigate a society structured by both colonial power and patriarchal dominance, and how through education, writing, and activism they created a new vision of women's emancipation. Before beginning my main discussion, let me first introduce the context and purpose of my study. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, Bengal was a dynamic site of social reform, cultural renaissance, and political upheaval. Within this complex milieu, Muslim women's voices were largely marginalized in mainstream narratives. While Hindu reform movements received considerable attention, the intellectual and activist contribution of Muslim women remained shadowed, yet their efforts were no less profound. Now, I would like to discuss the objectives of our paper. This paper has three primary objectives. Firstly, to analyze the critical attack on the norms of patriarchy and male dominance beyond the domestic spheres by Muslim women, who in most cases were interested in promoting the welfare of Muslim women. Secondly, to trace how the key themes of Muslim women in their organizations were engaged in challenging patriarchal norms. And thirdly, to examine the intersection of these historical interventions with colonial politics and discourse of nationalism and more general social reform agendas, resulting in epistemic structure that opposed imperial and patriarchal system. The story that unfolds is not merely one of resistance, It is a story of knowledge creation, social transformation, and redefinition of identity. To understand this transformation more clearly, let us first look at how Muslim women began their struggle against patriarchy within their own society. When we think about colonial Bengal, we often focus on male reformers and nationalist leaders. Yet, beneath that surface, a quieter, quite equally powerful revolution was unfolding, led by Muslim women who challenged patriarchy within patriarchy. They fought a double battle, one against British imperialism, which depicted them as backward and voiceless, and another against their own community's patriarchal restrictions, which confined them within domestic space. Their tools were not weapons or violence, but education, literature, and social reforms. Here, I would like to discuss about few Muslim women who contributed mostly. The journey began in the mid 19th century with women like Tehirunnisa, one of the earliest Muslim women to write in Bengali prose. In the 1860s, her letter, published in Bamabodini Patrika, argued made not to neglect women's education. She argued that an educated woman enlightens both her father's and husband's home, a simple yet revolutionary idea for her time. Another pioneering figure was Nawab Faizunnesa Chaudhurani of Kamila. She was a landowner, philanthropist, and writer who managed her estates, established schools and hospitals, and used her wealth to uplift Muslim women's education. Though she lived under Porda, her choice to adopt the masculine title Nawab rather than Begum, symbolizing her rejection of gendered hierarchies. The next is Azizun Nessa Khatun, one of the earliest English educated Muslim women who translated literary works and wrote poetry that celebrated women's intellectual freedom. Another one is Khairun Nessa Joha. Though her writing is Nabnud, connected women's empowerment with national progress and Swadeshi movement, arguing that women's education was vital to the strength of the nation. But no name shines brighter in this awakening than Begum Rokeya, or more famously known as Begum Rokeya Sakwat Hossain, the emblem of Muslim women's intellectual resistance in colonial Bengal. Through her story Sultana's Dream, she envisioned Ladyland, which is a utopian world ruled by women where men live in seclusion. It was not mere fantasy but a profound critique of gender inequality and an assertion of women's capacity to lead. In her essays such as God Gives, Man Robes, Rokia exposed how man distorted religion to justify the subjugation of women. She argued that Islam itself promotes equality and knowledge for both men and women. Her Shakwat Memorial Girls' School in Calcutta embodied her vision, turning education into a living movement for liberation. Despite her progressive and independent outlook, Begum Rokeya did not reject the principle of Porda, which she regarded as a matter of modesty and pioneering rather than seclusion. In her essays Borkha, she observed that veiling was not natural but ethical, explaining that Porda meant maintaining decency through proper dress. She advocated for a necessary and moderate Porda, emphasizing balance rather than extremity. When she planned to establish the Sakwat Memorial Girls' School, Rokia made it clear that her institution would observe Porda strictly not as a symbol of submission but as a strategic compromise to make girls' education socially acceptable at that time. She described opening such a school in Calcutta as the crying need for the time. Thus, she did not seek to abolish Porda altogether, rather, she reinterpreted it within a modern reformist framework. In her essays Istri Jatir Avanoti, meaning the degradation of status of women, and Ardhangini, meaning the better half, Rokeya asserted that Islam, when interpreted rationally, upheld equal education for women. She viewed education not only as a means of enhancing women's familial roles but also as a path towards economic independence and intellectual self-realization. Rokeya believed that education would spark both intellectual awakening and economic self-sufficiency, empowering women to challenge restrictive norms. Her thinking, though rooted in Islamic values, also bore the imprint of Western liberal ideas. She envisioned a useful education that blended Eastern moral principles with Western rationalism. Alongside Rokeya, women like Mahmuda Khatun Siddiqa Fazilatul Nisa Joha and Akhtar Mahal Sayyida Khatun continued these intellectual traditions. The aspiration of Muslim women to represent their own lived realities in writing found vivid expression in words of Begum Supiya Kamal, who contributed extensively to the literary journal Saugat. For many reform-minded Bengali Muslim writers, education became the central focus in their struggle to secure women's rights within an Islamic moral order. The life of Begum Samsun Nahar Mahmud reflects this complex struggle. Though she excelled at the Khastagir Girls High School in Chittagong, she was compelled to withdraw when conservative interpretations of Orda deemed it improper for adolescent girls to attend public schools after puberty. Similarly, Supiya Kamal's early experiences revealed deep gender disparities in access to education. While boys from Muslim families attended mosque and maktabs, girls were confined to
Raviul, you
domestic
have
training.
2 minutes to conclude.
Okay, okay. I am directly going to the conclusion of my paper. In conclusion, in the early decades of the 20th century, a segment of the Bengali Muslim intelligentsia actively engaged in modernizing the community through educational and social reform. Their initiatives sought to emancipate women from traditional constraints while remaining rooted in faith and cultural continuity. The story of Muslim women in colonial Bengal is one of the intellectual courage, resilience, and creative resistance. Through education, literature, and political activism, they challenged the double chains of empire and patriarchy, often without stepping outside the boundaries of their faith or culture. They transform the private sphere into a space of empowerment, the classroom into a site of reform, and the printed page into a weapon of defiance. Their legacy endures not just in feminist scholarship but also in the ongoing struggles for gender justice and social equality. They taught us that liberation need not always be loud or violent. Sometimes it is silent, steady, and rooted in knowledge. In their lives and works, we find a profound truth that to challenge patriarchy from within is not an act of submission but of supremacy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Raviul, and thank you, everyone. I now request Professor Anisur Rahman to give his remarks and comments on the presenters.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you so much indeed. So we have in fact, as we are adequate time, let me tell you that why we did it that so that some of the participants have also joined. So they must have questions, queries. Even the panelists who have given their presentation are indeed brilliant. But what basically we are going to do is to have the question answer session, and at the end of your question answer I will give my own remarks. So if anybody is having any question, queries, observation,
Uh,
are welcome. Yes.
so we have questions in the chat box.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
that would be better. That would be
yeah,
better to address to the respective panelist,
yes.
and thereafter I will give my remarks. That would be better because they have given a lot of time for their presentation, and some of the participants are also listening. So my importance is not negligible, in fact.
All
Yes,
right, sir.
go.
So we'll take up the first question. The first question is for Tanya. Uh, so Arushi asks, do we see a possibility of perhaps erasing the clause of striking the wife from the nikah nama and do any divorce proceeding on the clause of intense violence subjected on the wife?
Yeah. So,
So only one question is addressed to Tanya, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
So, of course, like the entire the legal system, talking about the Islamic law and the Dharam Shastras of the Hindu laws, none of them actually talked about, striking off the beating of women in that sense. But that does not mean कि ऐसा नहीं हो रहा है कि अगर domestic violence को हम हटा दे तो चीजें we can be transparent. You can see the idea of divorce. वो prevalent है. So there are like two incidents, like, one is कि after the divorce, the woman is fighting for the custody of the daughter. So in that case, the court is with her that, the custody needs to be with the daughter. And on the contrary, you have cases like, a man who killed his wife under the, the adulterous acts, and the court is not actually punishing him. It's just the small penalty you are getting for that. So of course, like, I have not came across, at least in my course of study, that there were the remarks on striking the law of domestic violence. So I hope this answers the question.
I'm sure to some extent it does. And our so the next question is addressed to Muhammad Siddiqui Khan. Arushi again asks, regarding the text that talks about marital relations and the husband and wife, do we see any possibility of agency residing with women to transgress religious or social stereotypes put on them?
Okay, so thank you so much, Arushi, for that question. Uh, yes, there is some agency to transgress because as we talk about colonial time, and there is a distinction made by scholars like Dipesh Chakrabarti, like there is a sacred sphere and then there is a social sphere. So women are relegated to only sacred sphere, which is the homely sphere, and she is relegated, or she is only bound within the duties of household, and nothing intellectual, nothing social, or I mean, not even not possible for political. But when we read these texts, so there is a hint that women can actually engage with their husbands in terms of intellectual discussions about society, about their families, about the education of the children, about business, about politics of the country. Not that much, but to some extent, yes. Do we see that there is a transgression, especially in terms of religious stereotypes, because the contemporary, although it's not given in Islam, as these scholars have been arguing against, that the contemporary customs were that woman is only there for just to get married. I mean, all the patriarchal norms, just to get married, to bear children and everything. But these scholars have talked about the equality in terms of intellect, in terms of family rights, in terms of coming together to create something big. For example, as we see that the journal, the first Urdu women's journal, Tehzib Niswa, was founded by both husband and wife, Sayyid Mumtaz Ali and Muhammadi Begum. So it was not just in preaching, it was also in practice. So yes, there is a transgression possible.
Thank you, Mohammad Siddiqui Khan Saab. The next question is by me and it is addressed to Dr. Lubna Irfan. So my question is, when you said that the magazine also talked about mothering and other aspects of women in life, and that has been trend in many of the women's magazine that came around, the independence movement. So I want to ask, during your reading of this particular magazine, how much do you see women's representation as an individual, or talks about women as just a woman and not a figure like mother, daughter, or sister, or we know because mothering was overemphasized during this time, the role of a woman in a certain role. So how much of the other narrative do you see?
Hi, thank you for the question, Preeti. I'm unable to share my video right now, but yeah. So there was this larger trope of how being a mother and being a family person is important. There was this consciousness. Obviously, they're trying to get women from elite families, from Sharif households to the modern education setup. So there's a lot of this insecurity amongst the people who are going to send their daughters. So the narrative does not leave this idea of a mother or a family oriented woman. how important is it to educate her is directly related to how the future generations are going to be raised. So there is this consciousness throughout these different volumes of this magazine that came out. Yes, the tone shifted from the earlier times to the later time. For example, the magazines in the later for example 1912 or 1914 became more comfortable with talking about women who are doing different kinds of activities, who are traveling, but the larger narrative remained focused on women within the household. So there is no breaking away from that dynamics, at least in this magazine. I don't observe it.
Thank you for that answer. It actually answers a lot. I'm a student of history, and so that's why, because the magazines that we've been reading, especially in archives, this is a trope that we see. I invite any of the presenters, if they have questions, please unmute and you can ask to the respective presenter if any more questions we have.
Can I ask Tanya a question?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, you talked about marriage laws and the Nikah Nama. And there's very interesting work done on it by Professor Farhat Hassan. So I just wanted to, you mentioned about the Bilgrami family and their Nikah Nama. So can you shed some light on that as well? What is the work that has been done on their Nikah Namas? Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So basically, it's talks about the families, and how the share of
What is the
daughters.
I'm so sorry to intervene. What is the source of the research on Bilgrami
Uh,
family?
yes, ma'am. So actually, I am right now. I'm literally not in this literally, I'm not able to recollect that. I will get back to you with the source. It's one of the document. Yeah. So it's Belgrami. It mainly comes from the Awadh, the Kasbah of
That I
Awadh.
know. That I know about the Bilgrami, famous Bilgrami family.
Yeah.
But it is basically about the men of the Bilgrami family that Gail Minow has also mentioned. So this is for the first time that you're talking about their, if I'm not mistaken, their family and their Nikanamas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So basically, I was talking about the legal records, which we're talking about. The women were also having the
Yes.
share in the properties. So the mainly it was like how the daughters and the women were like, during the in gifts and inheritance were given the part in the context which I am talking about were is like how the land was given to the daughters of the family, and at the same time, not only to the daughters but also to the daughter-in-laws of the family. So
If there's any work, I would love to you to share on it, because it was
yeah.
already when you are a student of history, we see the richest women in the world are from the Mughal families, like Noor Jahan and Jahanara Begum was running a business, and one of the richest women at that point, not only in South Asia but in the world. She had a shipping company. She was running business, and they all were inheriting huge chunks of property, all these women in Mughal India. So that's what I just wanted to ask you, because my interest is also on Mughal history as well as history in colonial India. So you see a number of, after the colonization, after the British came in, how the rights of women actually, you can say, they were, how interpretations were more rigid, and how customary laws, uh, in fact, denied them many rights that they were available at the time of the Mughal Nikahnamas that were there. So after that, the Nikahnamas became more rigid and more, denying certain rights that Mughal Nikahnamas have, that Professor Farhan Hassan and Shirin Musvi have dealt with.
uh,
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, participants. I now request Professor.
Just a second. I have two questions. Can I quickly ask? You have 2 minutes for that?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, we have the time. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. No, excellent presentations. I'm really impressed. Obviously, the time is less, and still you all managed to touch upon, areas that really matter that we need to discuss. Thank you, Huma, for referring to Begum Khurshid Khwaja. I am very interested in the figure of Begum Khurshid Khwaja. In fact, we edited a volume on Jamia women with Margaret Parnau. Margaret Parnau and I did that. And I was really looking for someone to write on Begum Khurshid Khwaja, and I couldn't find anyone. So if you can develop that as a paper and share with me, I have shared my number in the chat box with you. Please do connect, because there is very little. I mean, I have access to what Gandhi ji published in his newspaper about her, but very little information, especially during the time when when her husband was in prison and she took charge of Jamia in Aligarh. Most scholars of on Jamia deny any contribution of Begum Khurshid Khwaja, and I was really struggling to kind of recover that. So I'm glad you brought that up. And Lubna, I wanted to ask you, when it comes to these magazines, it is very difficult to say whether these articles or stories published in the name of women were actually written by women, or these were men impersonating as women. So I mean, what strategy do you use to decipher, and what is the percentage of contribution of women writers to Khatun specifically?
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah, so I understand that there can be like written articles written by some other person and read by.
Mostly husbands, they wrote in the names of their wives and
Yes,
published.
but there are articles. Yeah, so there are articles which are directly mentioned, like MJ Begum writes about a particular article. But yeah, there can be this hint that they have been written by their husbands and or the male in the family, and they have been published in the name of the woman. But there are men also writing in their own name in the magazine. So the percentage, I have not statistically analyzed it, but like as far as I remember, or I can jog my memory, it is around 80% of the articles are written by men and 20% of articles are written by women, and but they are mentioned by their own name, and these women are like elite women, people who are educated, like belonging to like elite families, who have gained education in the, really sorry for the disturbance, who have gained education in their households, right? So there is a certainty that these women are using their own name, and they must have written those articles because education was there for at least the elite women, and Urdu was something that they can write and read. So yeah, that is something that is an interesting angle that also I can explore, to look at how men can also be writing and women publishing in women's name, but men were also publishing in their own name. Majority of the writers were men, but there were women writers as well. Yeah.
Good. I mean, I strongly feel that this is an area still unexplored or underexplored. So I'm very happy that you are taking it up, and I really hope that more and more students invest, because these are difficult terrains. People usually pick up low-hanging fruits. So so good, very good. Very happy with all the presentations. Congratulations to all the presenters.
Can I come in here on
Yeah,
Khatun?
Huma.
Small
Yeah.
observation. I think even in the Tehzeeb and Niswa, Khatun and Ismat, women were using male pseudonyms, or they were using because Naam ka Parda, they were saying ki Walda of so and so. So that is also very interesting that there's still the 30th century.
Yeah. I mean, up to Nazre Sajjad Haider, she published as Binte Nazre Bakar or something, and
Yes, yes,
yeah, and even the first novelist of Urdu, she published as Walida Barrister Suleiman. So that was a common practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what
Yeah.
about men writing in the name of wives? That is
yes.
something very difficult to tell.
Yeah, and that's an interesting area that is supposed to be explored, how
Yeah.
like one is writing in the name of the other, but
And
it's
it's
very
not
interesting.
just cartoon, across the magazines, across the
Yeah,
publications that came out
yeah.
between 1890s to 1930s.
And
Yeah.
even when Sheikh Abdullah is writing, he's writing Begum Sheikh Abdullah, like, biography of Begum Sheikh Abdullah. So the
Yeah,
name
yeah.
of the husband is very, very, important, relevant at that point of time in context of any women.
Husband, brother, father. Yeah, yeah.
Also, yeah, I just wanted to add here before I forget the discussion regarding Bilgram that Huma ma'am and Tanya were having. There is this Taskera, if I am not wrong, maybe you people have looked at it, Masir al Kiram. And this deals with Bilgram and the history of Bilgram, so that can be useful for
No,
people who are
there's a
working.
lot of literature, I think, on Bilgram. But Huma,
Yeah.
as for
Okay.
Sarbulan Jung, we had invited Daniel, who has written this book on, and this is translated Safarnama. So yeah.
Can we now wind up, Nishad?
Yeah, sure, 100%. This is a
I have
conversation.
given all time to the participant, to you as well. Thank you once again. Thank you so much. So I will take only, I think time is up now. So I will not take much of the time, just to, I will wind up. So what I could do that, I will just give a big thanks to all these six presentations. It's indeed a brilliant presentation made by this, Huma Hassan first. She talked a lot about the importance of Islamic feminism, how it has arisen, especially in South Asia, how it is worked as the tool of Istihad. So he has talked about South Asia. So it's a brilliant presentation. I know that when she will develop her paper, so you will get the chance to read it much more in details. The second presentation is by Muhammad Siddiq Saab, who has talked about negotiation and collaboration. So he has brilliantly gave his presentation, and then Dr. Muhammad Aslam Parvez, he talked about educating Muslim girls in the historical perspective. So I wish I could have time, so I give my own comments on the presentation. And then thereafter, Dr. Lubna Irfan also talked about Aligarh movement and all that. Tanya and of course Rabiul Mullah and Tan Tanmoy Saha, they all have given their own presentation. I know that time were only allotted for 10 minutes. I know that whenever we go to any seminar, there's always shortage of time. So what basically we expect in the seminar that only the important points needs to be highlighted, and they did it brilliantly. So with these words, once again, I am thankful to the organizers, especially to the dynamic director of the Women Studies Center. I know you so well. So it's very, I am appreciating, and I am also very happy that you have done a very good job, especially on this issue, Islamic feminism. I think it is happening for the first time. Because the area to which I am specializing is West Asia. So that over there, it is very dominant. And here you have organized. So I have got the chance to listen to these young and the budding scholars. So definitely, I think when you will bring out the proceedings of this seminar, so we'll get another chance to learn and to debate all these issues. So with these words, once again, I'm very, very thankful to all of you, especially to the organizer, reportees, basically Preeti and I think one person was Devans Dikshit. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Nishad.
sir, for your kind words. And I would now like to present the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I extend our deepest gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Mazhar Asif, and our Registrar of Jamia Millia Islamia, Professor Mahtab Alam Rizvi, for helping us organize this, for being our chief patrons and patron. A heartfelt thanks to our distinguished chair, Professor Anisur Rahman, for his presence and insightful perspectives, and our director, Nishad Zaidi, for joining us. We also have a convener, Dr. Amina Hussain, with us. I would like to thank her for presenting us with this opportunity. I would also like to thank all the participants without whom the event cannot be the success that it is. At last but not the least, my gratitude goes out to the entire organizing team and volunteer whose commitment and tireless efforts have ensured the seamless execution of this program. Thank you, everybody. And with that, we have come to the end of session.
May I just quickly request all the presenters who are connected with us to please stay tuned, because your paper might be over, but we have lots of other paper lined up. So I would really appreciate if you can stay on for the other technical sessions and participate in the discussion. And also please ensure that you participate and attend, especially the plenaries and the valedictories, which are right in the middle. If you have the schedule with you, and if you do not have the schedule, you're all connected in the group, I believe. So you will have access. If you need anything, you can just message. You will have the revised brochure and everything. So please stay till the end. And also there is a feedback form, which I would request everyone to fill. It's in the chat box. Thank you, everyone.